Shalom, brothers and sisters. Hope you're good today. This is Eugene from Kenya. So today's video, we're going to talk about the 10 misconceptions that visitors think about Africa. They normally think about this because they haven't set foot in Africa. But these are the misconceptions that most of the people who haven't visited Africa always think about Africa. So guys, let's see the 10 misconceptions that visitors who haven't come to Africa still thinks about Africa till today, 2023. So let's roll. People only think that, in Africa, we only have, it's only attractive because of tourism. Well, they don't see other attractions which are in Africa. For instance, it's funny that Africa is perceived primarily as a destination for safaris and wildlife, overshadowing other attractions. In reality, Kenya, famous for its wildlife, is home to the big five, the lion, the elephant, buffalo, leopards, and rhinoceros, and over 10,000 bird species. However, the country's tourism sector is diverse, which is true, contributing approximately to 8.8% to the GDP as per the year 2019. While in South Africa, renowned for its safaris, boasts over 600 national parks and reserves, tourism contributes to around 3% to South Africa's GDP. Ghana has a growing tourism industry, contributing around 5.5% to its GDP. So guys, I'm using three countries, that is Kenya, Ghana, and South Africa, to lay out, these facts and these data, so as to show you that these are the misconceptions that you guys perceive, Africa to be, because the country which are well known for, visitors is Ghana, South Africa, and Kenya. So I'm going to use the three countries as my reference point. So guys, that was the first misconceptions that you guys have about Africa. Misconception number 2. You guys probably think that, in Africa there's poverty everywhere. People are just, people don't have clothes, people don't have food, people are walking barefooted. Well, there are some cases, there are some places where that happens, but it's not entirely truth. Well, listen to this. There is an assumption that poverty is an ubiquitous across Africa. In reality, for example, in Kenya, the poverty rate decreased from 46.8% in the year 2005 to 21.4% in the year 2020. And GDP per capita reached approximately $1,809 in the year 2020. Ghana's poverty rate decreased from 51.7% in 1991 to 23.4% in the year 2017, and its GDP per capita was around $2,200 in the year 2020. South Africa's poverty rate decreased from 66.6% in 1996 to 27.3% in 2019, and its GDP per capita was around $5,166 in 2020. So the African's economy is growing, and there is still assumption, a lot of people still think that, in Africa, people are angry, people don't have food. Not entirely, because Africa itself, it's growing, and I think it's imperative if any visitor who comes to Africa debunks that mentality that, Africa people are starving. We might be starving some points of Africa, not all of it, but Africa is taking steps in improving every day and night. There are a lot of developments, and actually it's this year in which Kenya held, a climatic summit, which was done by one of the biggest universities in Africa, that is the University of Nairobi, which is in Kenya. And actually, Kenya, through the University of Nairobi, that's Africa, it's working on the climatic changes, ways in which we can have a food security in the next coming 20 years for us to avoid, a lot of insecurities that deals with food. So Africa is not poor entirely, and I want to assure you that we are taking steps in making that come true. Misconception number 3. Well, a lot of people still think that, we have these infectious diseases which are still in Africa. And there was this story of, HIV AIDS and its origin in Africa. So there are a lot of theories that stipulates that HIV came from Africa. Well, it might be true or it's true. But some people still think that today there are a lot of diseases in Africa. Well, I want to assure you that Africa is doing well when it comes to immunity, and Africa itself is striving to produce food crops, to produce food that are nutritious to its people. Well, while this there are some people who still think that Africa, there are diseases. Africa itself is taking places in making sure that this is not there. I'll use three countries as my reference point. That is Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa. So there is a misconception that some might think that infectious diseases are widespread across the continent. Well, in reality, health challenges persist. Considerable progress has been made. Kenya, for example, has been in Kenya, for example, there has been reduction in HIV prevalence from 7.2 in the year 2007 to 4.9 in 2020. Ghana has successfully battled malaria, with deaths declining from 2002 in the year 2010 to 585 in the year 2019, while South Africa, despite challenges, has a well-developed healthcare system. So Africa itself is, it's thriving with the medication and the medicine sector, and we are taking this part in ensuring that our children are being vaccinated. As a few people think that, Africa children are not vaccinated. Children are in deficiency because there is no food. There are diseases. The children are still thin, and yeah, there are a lot of misconceptions that people still think about Africa. Well, we are sorry. Come and visit for yourself. Come and see for yourself. This is true. Misconception number 4, and there are no schools in Africa. Students don't know how to read and write, which translates that most of people are illiterate in Africa. Well, we were illiterate, but as per the year 2023, nope. Africa, we are not illiterate, and we are having biggest universities across the continent, across the world, which are recognized as, and our students in Africa are taking part in greatest innovations across the world. So we are educated, we are literate, we can reason just like any other person. I'm sorry to those who still think that, Africans are illiterate and can't read and write and can't, differentiate between what is right and what is good. You still think that in Africa, we still sit under the tree and listen to our grandparents. It's true. That's informal type of education, but we also have the formal type of education. Well, listen to this. There's an assumption that education is limited and of poor quality in Africa. In reality, Kenya's literacy rate stood up to 82.1% as per the year 2018. Ghana has made strides in education with a net enrollment rate of 89.9 in 2018. South Africa depends a significant portion of its budget on education, with nearly 94% of children in relevant age group attending school. Imagine, 94% of children in Ghana are attending school. So while you still think that, in Africa, it's only 10% of people who attend schools, that's wrong. 94% of children attend school in Ghana, and the government has ensured that every student, get to be paid for. Every student gets to study from their primary schools up to their tertiary levels. So that's a misconception that you need to get off your mind. Misconception number 5, aid dependency. Yeah, some people still think that, Africa depend heavily on, aid. Can be true. We depend on aid, but not entirely, as most of you think that, in Africa we think we need foreign aids so much. We might need them, but not so much, because we have diversified our income as African countries. That is Kenya, Ghana, and South Africa as my reference. Listen, believe that African countries, including Kenya, Ghana, and South Africa, are heavily reliant on foreign aid, while in reality, these countries have diversified their economies. Kenya's GDP was approximately $95 billion in the year 2020, with sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, and services contributing to significantly. Ghana's economy has been growing with sectors like oil, cocoa, and services playing a crucial role. In South Africa's economy, valued at 350 billion dollars in 2020, is diverse with sectors like mining, manufacturing, and finance. So, not entirely foreign aid. We also, take part in other activities which bring food to the table for the Kenyan economy, for the Ghanaian economy, for the South African economy general in Africa. So stop thinking that, in Africa we heavily rely on foreign aid. That's not entirely truth. Africa, it's still striving. Africa is finding its ways. Africa will rise. Africa is rising. If not today, if it's not tomorrow, if it's not the other day, you never know. Africa is rising. Misconception number 6. It's funny how some people still think that in Africa we have one language, we have the same language. I'm speaking to you right now, I'm speaking English. And some people will ask you, oh, your English is good. So you're African. Don't you speak that language? I don't know what they refer to it. But some people still believe that in Africa we have one language, without knowing that, Africa is not a monolinguistic country, a monolinguistic continent. We have multiple languages as Africans. So listen to this. Some individuals may perceive Africa as a monolithic entity with a single culture, language, or lifestyle, while in reality, Africa is extraordinarily diverse. For instance, Kenya, Ghana, and South Africa alone each have distinct culture, languages, and traditions. Kenya is home to more than 40 different ethnic groups. Ghana boasts over 70 distinct ethnic groups and more than 250 languages. South Africa, with 11 official languages, exemplified linguistic diversity. So tell me if you still think that in Africa we have one language, we don't have one language, and you find out for yourself. For example, in Kenya we have two official languages, that's English and Kiswahili. Apart from the local languages or the indigenous languages that people speak, we have two official languages, that's English and Kiswahili. So if you still think that in Africa we have actually, in Kenya alone we have around 42 ethnic groups or communities. So tell me, do we still speak the same language in the 42 communities? Maybe I'm a Luo, there's a person who is Kamba, there's a person who is Luya. We don't speak the same language. These two languages which brings us together, thus are the two official languages in Kenya, that's English and Kiswahili. So it's a misconception. Misconception number 7. Africa is still primitive. Africans, some houses, there are no electricity, that's what they believe. We don't have buildings, we don't have modern buildings. Well, maybe that's what they show you on the media, but Africa, it's not the way you think. Africa, it's not the way you think. There may be a perception that Africa is underdeveloped or lacking modern amenities. In reality, in urban centers such as Nairobi, that is in Kenya, Accra, which is in Ghana, and Johannesburg of South Africa, has a significant advancement and evident. For instance, in South Africa is classified as an upper middle income economy by the World Bank. Ghana's economy has been growing steadily with a GDP per capita of approximately $2,200. Kenya's GDP per capita is around $1,800 billion, and it's considered an emerging market. So tell me if you still think that we are primitive and we don't have resources to to invest on resources to. So guys, if you're watching this video for the first time, kindly consider subscribing. This is Eugene from Kenya. So guys, until now, let's see you in the next video. Salute.